Hello, welcome all to Hop to Broadway. I'm John Heginbotham, and I am a New York City-based choreographer and also the director of the Dartmouth Dance Ensemble and a lecturer in theater in the Department of Theater at Dartmouth. And you know what, I have to say, this is, I believe, our fifth installment of Hop to Broadway, and I often like to start with a song. But I wasn't planning on that this time, except I think that there actually is a song or an excerpt of a song that is appropriate for the moment. So I'm just going to warm up the voce for a moment. La, 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 la. Okay. Sometimes it snows in April. Thank you, Prince, for writing that beautiful, beautiful song. If you don't know that song, I highly recommend checking it out. I believe it's off of the Parade album, Under the Cherry Moon. So listen, I am so thrilled to be here tonight because our guest is so fabulous and fantastic. She's a renowned and beloved choreographer, director, and dancer, and she is literally a beloved choreographer because she choreographed the film starring Oprah Winfrey, directed by Jonathan Demme, Beloved. She is also an award winner many times over. She is the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Dance USA Honor Award, a Bessie Award, multiple Bessie Awards, and she is also an Emmy Award nominee. So I would like to please bring up a photo of Dianne McIntyre. Gorgeous. Dianne is the one with her arms raised in the center of the circle. And may we please welcome Dianne McIntyre to the room.
Hello. Hello. I'm so happy to be with you, Jonathan and John. Okay, you said Jonathan Demme. Okay, John and all of the people who are here in the audience.
Dianne, you're welcome to call me pretty much anything you would like. And it's really wonderful to see you.
Great to see you too.
Listen, Dianne, I would like to actually talk about the photo we just showed for a moment.
Yes.
Can you please let us know what is happening in this photo? And maybe we could even, Dave and Kevin, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up once again.
That's a picture of me when I was a student at the Ohio State University Dance Department. And I was in Brandenburg Concerto, choreographed by Doris Humphrey and Ruth Currier. And our department did quite a number of what you might nowadays call archival, traditional choreography, real often reconstructed from La Bonne Notation. So maybe I was 19 at that time. And so I loved doing those works. We also did Passacaglia and Fugue, another Doris Humphrey work that was an earlier work even.
That's fantastic. So this is a question, is your introduction to dance through sort of that iconic classical modern style?
My introduction to dance was in Cleveland, Ohio, where I live now. I lived for many years in New York City. And my introduction to dance was with my original dance teacher, Elaine Gibbs Redmond, and we're still very close in touch. I talked to her last week. And also I danced with with Elaine. I developed in ballet, tap, mostly traditional ballet. And I also had a modern dance teacher named Virginia Dryansky. And Virginia danced with the Caramel dancers. And Caramel is the oldest producing African-American theater in the country. It started in 1915.
And still going strong today.
Still going strong, stronger than ever, actually, yes.
So, you know what, you're bringing up something that I feel might be important to mention for those who maybe are not so tied to the dance world, which is that it's a really tight community. And, you know, you're describing your teachers who brought you, you know, into this world of the performing arts and dance. Yes. And, you know, you're also describing how this institution has lasted all this length of time and you're still in touch with your teacher. Yes. It's one of the beautiful aspects of this sort of dance world.
It is. it is. And then from there, I thought that I would be in some type of academic area because I did very well as a student in school. However, I was just drawn to the dance, and I became a dance major at The Ohio State University. And I was so inspired by the instructors there and our guest teachers, most of whom were based in New York City. And so I guess then I just gravitated to New York, the next step. That was my next step. Yes.
And Dianne, may we also bring up another photo now? Kevin and Dave, this is a photo. Yep, exactly. Their eyes were watching God.
Yes.
Another production, Dianne, in which you were involved. Can you talk about this photo and what is happening here?
Yes. So in this particular photo, it's from my dance company. Not long after I arrived in New York, I started my own dance company. I got a lot of boldness from my dance teachers and from the inspiration I received at Ohio State, as if we could do anything we wanted in terms of dance and production and all aspects of dance. So I had my company called Sounds in Motion. We were very closely connected with musicians. We always danced with live music. We collaborated developing our music and dance together. So at one point, this amazing, great producer, Woody King Jr., who is the artistic director and founder of New Federal Theater in New York City. And he's in partnership as artistically with Elizabeth Van Dyke now, who is the producer. Long time ago, Woody said, Dianne, you know, the modern dance is fine, but sometimes it's a little hard for people just to get into modern, just to get in, to connect what is happening. He said, you know, I have an idea. If you did a piece that used the title of a novel, it would draw people to the production. He said, you don't even have to do anything that's like the book. Just have the title. He said, you could do a whole abstract dance, but the title will get the people there. I said, wow. He said, use one of your favorite books. I chose, of course, Their Eyes Were Watching God. And my two associates, Olu Dara, amazing collaborator, musician, and he started out really in the avant-garde jazz field, and then he eased back into his own roots, which in blues, country, all that grounded type of music. And so Olu, I wanted him because Their Eyes Were Watching God has that Southern sound. And I also wanted Butch Morris, Lawrence Butch Morris, another composer I worked with a lot, because I wanted him to do the intrigue part of the music. I said, your music should be like the movie music. You're doing the movie music. Olu is doing the country music. So then what happened though, John, I started at the beginning, remembering that Woody said, even if it's kind of abstract version of the piece. But what happened, I started from the beginning of the book and I choreographed it all the way through.
Well, okay,
all
Dianne,
the way through.
that's kind of...
And no words. We had no words.
Also musicians not singing, no lyrics.
Olu did one or two songs for us. Okay. We had to sing.
Okay.
The musicians were on the stage because they were part of the set. Like they were part of the community. They were costumed also. And the other thing that, because one time my father said, yes, like Woody, he said, you know, the modern dance is okay, but you all are always on a bare stage. I said, right, Daddy, that's right. So for Their Eyes Were Watching God, I got Felix Cochran, amazing set designer. And he created this set, the front porch, which you had to have where Their Eyes Were Watching God. And I gave him an instruction of some area I read in the book, and I'm going to read the quote. The quote that struck me, which inspired the set, was, when the people sat around on the porch, this was Janie, the main character. She said, when the people sat around on the porch and passed around the pictures of their thoughts for others to look at and see, it was nice. The fact that the thought pictures were always crayon enlargements of life made it even nicer to listen to. So when I read their thoughts, pictures were crayon enlargements of life, I told him I wanted all of the set to look like crayon drawings.
Wow.
That's what he did. And even the props and the mule, everything with all the props were flat. And they had etchings on them that were like drawings, like you're looking at a crayon drawing. So this was, Janie had 3 husbands. The first, she wanted to be fulfilled in love. The first husband was just there. The second husband was ambitious. He became the mayor of the town, Eatonville, and he was not really paying attention to her needs. In fact, she was almost like a trophy wife. She was very beautiful, and sometimes he was abusive in his talking to her. She still hadn't found love. Finally, after he passed, she found Tea Cake, who was he was a migrant worker. He picked beans. She became part of his life. They got married and she became immersed. She had finally found that love. She became immersed in his life, and the people worked hard and they played hard. So this was one night after they had worked, and they were just having a good time singing and dancing on the front porch. So that was so if you see in the middle, that's Charles Wallace.
Can you see that photo one more time, please? Thank you.
And you see the guitar is a crayon drawing. You see what I mean? You see how all the, so it's a flat, and that's me over on your right, sitting on a chair.
With the overalls.
Yeah, we all have our overalls.
Oh, I see. You have a shirt. Not everybody has a shirt. You have a shirt.
Yeah, the guys don't have on shirts. The women. Karen Perry did our costumes. We had the best. So this was the first piece I ever did with my company where it was fully produced like a theater production.
Wonderful.
How they were all pure dancers. Sounds. Well, that was my company's name. Sounds.
So all of these parts of our lives that lead us toward the next thing. And you're talking about this, this idea coming from just an idea of like, just give the audience something to hold on to, an idea to hold on to, and then they will daydream and create their story, even if it's an abstract piece. And you went in a different direction and really listened to the text that you were reading.
Yes.
And created a piece. And I'll just say, it seems perhaps that may have informed some of the path of your career, because you have often worked with text in a variety of ways. And maybe what I could ask you about next is some of your sort of more, I was going to say pure theater, but as I say it, I'm not really quite sure even maybe what that means anymore.
Because in my world, it all is merged together.
Exactly, which is also why we go to the theater, to be taken out of what is familiar, sometimes. So could we talk about Ntozake Shange for a moment, who was a close collaborator with you?
Yes.
How did you meet?
So we met because Ntozake, I would say it was in 1975, she had arrived in New York City from the West Coast, where she had been teaching and had received her master's degree, and she was experimenting in Northern California with poetry and dance. It was the beginning of the seeds for Colored Girls. And she came east, and she came and auditioned for my dance school, to be a dancer with the company or a scholarship student. and she and her friend Paula Moss, who she collaborated with dancing, they came and she was a diehard student of mine, never missed a class, wonderful dancer. And one day somebody showed me things she had written, and I was totally shocked. I'm like, what? Intozaki is a dancer. You mean she writes like this? And sure enough, she did. And some of the people who were in that class met with her after class. I don't know what they were doing. I was going into a rehearsal. They met after class and they started working on other parts of her poetry, doing things in clubs. And Woody King Jr. saw one of those events they did, and he produced the very first version of For Colored Girls at New Federal Theater.
Now, Dianne, you
on to Joe Papp, and then it went on to Broadway. Yeah, Joe Papp at the Public Theater. I must articulate for people, people of different generations.
And the Public Theater, which you have also had a rich relationship with,
Yes.
Spell Number 7, a
Yes.
piece which you initiated, correct?
Well, Spell Number 7 is another choreo poem after For Colored Girls, which Intozaki wrote. She wrote all the poetry for that. And with Oz Scott, the director, the same director of For Colored Girls, I came together with Oz and Intozaki, and that's how Spell Number 7 evolved. The poetry was the solid poetry, although the order, this is kind of a little secret, the order of the poetry and what the poems were going to be was not laid out at the beginning. And however, the premise of the piece was already set from the beginning. She wanted a group of people who were actors, who were performers. And they were performers, and they came together in a club every evening after whatever their performances were, and they came and they talked about their lives. And one underlying part of all of their lives as Black actors was that they were sometimes wearing a mask of what the white producers wanted. One woman said, "Oh, am I going to be playing another this or that type of person?" Another says, "I'm a classically trained actor." Well, things like, they are certain issues that continue today. So out of all of these poems flowed from there. I'll tell you that I became spoiled working with Intozaki's words. Even though I had worked with poetry before I met her, I became spoiled because her words are music, and they are also saying something that is so deep. So in working with her poems, I find the dance language that supports the poems and also may have another commentary that the poetry does not say.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's what she said. The poem says they merge like that. And so that was one of the first major, you could say, pure theater. And then we did so many other works, sometimes in clubs, sometimes in lofts, sometimes at Kennedy Center, sometimes in a park or on a bridge. She just like, whoa, so many things people don't know about her avenue. Nothing was like bigger than this. It was like, yes, let's do this. And we're going to do it. She said, we're going to do it in my living room. Let's invite some people. And it will be magical. That was Intozaki. She always creating. She was still creating the day she passed. Yeah.
That is living the dream,
Yeah. Living the dream.
To be active for every moment.
Yes.
Doing something that you believe in and love.
Yes.
And Dianne, so another person with whom you've collaborated several times, August Wilson, or you have been involved in the plays of August Wilson.
Yes.
Marion McClinton, can we talk about your
Yes.
relationship with this director for a moment?
Okay. So Marion McClinton, I don't remember when I first met Marion. I knew he was a very renowned director on the scene. He was based in Minnesota. However, he did a lot of work in New York. So he asked me to choreograph a piece he did called Death and the King's Horseman. Powerful piece, which was done at Syracuse Stage. I had seen the piece years before, but I didn't understand it until I did it with Marion. Okay, so we did that at Syracuse Stage. I'm not going to go into the story. People can research it, okay? All right.
This is Dartmouth College. We're very accustomed to doing research. We love it.
Yes. So Marion called me maybe couple of years after that. I think it was in 2001. And he said, I'm working on a piece with August Wilson. He at that time was the person who directed most of August Wilson's work. So he was after, oh my goodness, the gentleman who was the head of Yale School of Drama.
Dianne, I wish I could help you, but I don't know the answer to this.
I need to put it in the chat. Okay. He's a very renowned director. So Marion was the main August Wilson director after. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I can't call the name. So Marion called me. He said, we're doing a new piece of August, and it's called King Hedley II. And we're out in Seattle working on it. And there's one part in it where the actors were doing their own thing, but we realized we should have a choreographer, not just the actors developing the dance themselves. And then he said, see, August had seen Death and the King's Horseman. I wasn't there when he was there. I wasn't there during the run of it. Evidently, he had seen it. Marion said, August said, get her. He meant the woman who had choreographed Death and the King's Horseman with Marion. So I got to understand the journey that August Wilson did as his works developed. So after Seattle, there were 5 other places that this production went in order to become the piece it was going to be. And I had the good fortune to be at each of those places. And the section that was choreographed is a waltz. What I found in August Wilson's work, especially in working in 2 of his pieces so closely with renowned directors, and in this time with August Wilson, is that if he has a song and a dance in the middle of his play, it usually, or maybe always, is a turning point. As you can imagine, someone who's a genius writer does not have an element that is not something pivotal. His dance in these 2 works the dance was pivotal. So in this particular scene, it's a waltz. I'm like, oh, good. Yes, put some Black people on the stage waltzing because we do that too. Thank you very much. Okay. So they're waltzing, and their waltzing is just like an evening in the backyard. It's not like a formal, a cotillion or something. So it's first is Leslie Uggams with Charlie Brown. 2 amazing. Although as we worked throughout these different theaters around the country, Charlie Brown was the only person who remained of the main characters who remained. The other people changed. Marion and so this waltz, there came some tension in the middle of the first. It was so beautiful. It's like, oh, isn't it? Oh, this play is getting ready to end, and everybody is going to be so happy. everything just working out. And in the middle of this waltz, the way something happened between two of the characters, a little misstep, and the woman who in the final version was Leslie Uggams, comments something about how she had really learned how to do it more properly by another person who is no longer around. Whoa, that was something that was unknown. Whoa, at that moment, everything exploded, but only exploded because of the ecstasy she was experiencing in the waltz as she ended up dancing all by herself after she had mentioned this man's name. She went into a whole ecstasy. So that, I was going to say that dancer. See, for me, when I'm working with people, they're all dancers. Okay. That person had to expand and it had to give everything they had and free at the end of that waltz by herself. And so that was my charge to have that happen. And so one day when we were, when Marion wasn't there, he was on a break or something. Sometimes August Wilson and I would chit chat about various things, not the play necessarily, but this would be something in the news or something. But this particular day, Marion wasn't there. He was on a break. And he said something about the waltz. And he expressed really what he saw in the waltz. And to me, I was like, wow. I mean, I was getting even though Marion was very clear, it was as August Wilson saw what was happening, and because he could see it, he saw more.
Well,
And
Dianne,
yeah.
Sorry, please finish your thought.
Yeah, and that was like, I'll never forget. And then I think he even made a little adjustment in the way that part was written.
See, so that's true collaboration. You know, we're listening to each other's work as it's being created and developed. And,
yes.
You know, you're describing also, August Wilson, a dance as a turning point. I mean, even the word turning point is, it's a dance term, or pivot is a dance term, or misstep is, they're all dance terms, but they're being used to describe, you know, the way the plot is proceeding through this play. And listen, Dianne, we need to move on a little bit, but I wouldn't want to depart from this part of the conversation. I would just love to see the photo from another August Wilson play that you worked on, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Could we please see that photo?
I'll talk fast.
Great, thank you. So Dianne, what are we seeing? And this is the Bartlett Shear production. Is that correct? Okay. Lincoln Center Theater.
This was Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I believe it was 2009, Lincoln Center, Broadway. This was Lincoln Center on Broadway, of August Wilson's Joe Turner's Come and Gone. And there have been many productions of this done over the years. By this time, August Wilson was not living when this production was done. So the people who, there's a rooming house, a boarding house where Black people coming from the South in the 1911, around that time, they're coming to Pittsburgh, where most of August Wilson's plays take place. And in this boarding house, all these stories come up. Now, two of the people who come into the boarding house is a man named Loomis and his little girl. He's looking for his wife. He was taken off the street in the South. The reason people came to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, because there were opportunities there for work. People came from the South, and then to have some place to stay while they were looking for work. This couple had a wonderful, beautiful boarding house. Into the boarding house where other people are staying, this man with his little girl comes because he's looking for his wife. He was taken off the street some years ago down south for no reason at all. And he was put in hard labor. Joe Turner gives people hard labor for 7 years. Maybe he looked at a white person. I can't remember what he did. Maybe he didn't step off the sidewalk while a white person was walking down the street. It could be any very little thing that is not any kind of crime. And people had the ability to arrest civilians, had ability to arrest a black man, sometimes women, and make them their modern slaves. They were enslaved, but they weren't called that. So he had to do that labor for 7 years. And when he gets out, he's looking for his wife with his little girl. So he's gone out someplace. And then in the middle of it, someone said, oh, let's do a Juba. So they're like, oh, okay. So Juba is a dance. Let me just tell you this, trying to get everything in, is that some people have called me to do a work in theater because I'm something like a researcher. I love to research historical dances and the history of Black people in this country and what the dances were like. Even the history of other peoples and dances of other places. I just love that. I'm kind of like an anthropological and historical, I absorb all of that. And at the same time, because we don't have all the answers to what those dances were like, then I use my ancestral memory and logic and the energy of the people who I'm associated with in the production to define what it could be. And I also used to go to this guy named Ernie Smith, who was the largest, he had just a great film collection of Black people in film. So we created a Juba, and the Juba had African type energy in it. And it was something that people really did. But of course, we don't have any record of what it was like. We have some stories. So we did a Juba, and everybody in the house comes and does the Juba, and it's only singing and sounds, rhythmic sounds they make with their hands and beating on the table, led by the great Roger Robinson, who won a Tony Award for this show. In the middle of this, the little girl gets into it, and Bartlett Shear, genius, I was gonna say choreographer, genius director, as Marion is a genius director too. He puts a little girl up on the table so everybody sees her, everybody's dancing around in the middle of this, and it gets to a euphoric energy. And like, wow, somebody even pronounces the Holy Ghost in the middle of it, even though it's a more secular type of dance. And in the middle of it comes Loomis. He goes off. He just flips out. He sees his child on, it wasn't just because he's seeing his child in the middle of this, and he goes into almost another state where he's having visions of people coming across the ocean, and they become bones, and the bones become flesh. And then Bynum, who is Roger Robinson, he picks up his monologue, and it becomes, whoa, it's just a scene that is just like magical, powerful, and just gets people in the guts. The Juba initiated that.
Another turning point, another important moment in the play.
Yeah, it had to get to a certain point. It couldn't be just, oh, this is a nice dance. Oh, yeah, da-da-da. And then he comes in. It has to make that actor really feel, yeah.
Well, and there's the power of dance. You know, it can take you somewhere, where words leave off.
That's
words
right.
take you to a certain place, and then dance can extend that or enhance it, or
yes,
add something that isn't there yet.
the fact that you say that is where I want to mention Douglas Turner Ward. Okay, the very first play I choreographed in New York City, the first play I ever choreographed was called The Great McDaddy. And I was invited to do that in 1974 by Douglas Turner Ward for the Negro Ensemble Company. From Doug, it had a lot of stylization in it. Some plays have where the people are actually dancing, normal people are dancing, and some are musicals where everybody's dancing, but some are plays that have stylization in them. This particular had both, had all of the above. But from Doug, I learned he taught me how dance forwards the action of a play. That without I don't mean in the way it's written, like what we just, in more style, that without this dance, you couldn't even understand the next part of the play. I learned that from Doug. And he was the founder of the Negro Ensemble, a co-founder of the Negro Ensemble Company. We have so much that all of us owe to him. So.
And Dianne, I believe you mentioned before we started the chat that he has recently passed.
Yes.
And so thank you for acknowledging his immense, contribution here in our talk.
Yes. Yes.
Dianne, may we just talk for this is called Hop to Broadway. So we're going to focus primarily on theater here, but, if we could talk for a moment about another collaboration you had with Jonathan Demme on the film Beloved. We have time for maybe like one anecdote and to show a couple of images of this amazing scene that you choreographed, which sort of also it talks about some of the things you've described about what dance can do and what it needs to do to shake up the energy of something or let us into a character's frame of mind. And so could we bring up several of the images from Beloved, please? Great.
Yes.
Okay. So we are seeing Oprah Winfrey, whose character's name is Setha, and her two daughters.
Yeah,
and
one
is... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Her two daughters, one of whom is sort of mysteriously, she has reappeared. She was gone for a while. I'm not going to explain everything about this, but she's here now. And these three women are watching a scene that doesn't exist, but focuses on, would it be appropriate to call this figure sort of, a magical figure, a shaman, I suppose, in a little bit of a way.
That's a good way to say it.
Baby Suggs.
Yes.
And would you mind describing sort of what is happening in the scene?
So in this scene, Oprah is telling her two daughters what it was like being in the presence of Baby Suggs and what they did every so often. I think maybe once a month or something. The whole community would come together. This is on the other side of the Ohio River, so that everybody is in a free state, okay? And so what happens here, we call it the dance in the clearing. Baby Suggs she comes there and people come there to hear her preach. However, at the beginning of this particular session, she instructs the children to laugh, the men to dance, and the women to cry. So I was instructed to create by Jonathan Demme. He said, Dianne, do what you want because you're the choreographer. I don't know anything about choreography. I said, Jonathan, those movies you've already done, you are a choreographer. Okay, so anyway, so with these individuals, 150 people, I choreographed them to be celebrating what Baby Suggs instructs them to do. Because there were so many people, I ended up rehearsing them and setting the movement of every single one of those 50 men in auditions, okay? Because we couldn't have rehearsals because they would have been more than extras. What happened, because I did have so many rehearsals, they became non-extras, and they all get residuals, all those 150 people. This was one of the most magical experiences I ever had. Bea Richards being, as Baby Suggs, being one of the queens of theater and film of the 20th century. She was awesome. Oh my goodness. It was not like a play. It was real. And then after they dance, she shares with them how they must love themselves, because them over there, the so-called master, the master cares nothing about them, not about their hands, not about they cut out the one about the neck, not about their hands, not about their dot, and not about their heart. Most important of all, she says, love your heart. And Jonathan Demme loved this scene so much that he broke it up into 3 parts in the film. It was after when she finished, when Bea Richards finished, and we were up on a hill someplace watching it happen. She says, "Hallelujah!" Now the scene is over, so-called. Hallelujah! But all the people start gathering around her, and she sat down on the rock and she started hugging the little children. And the singing, when people see the singing was real. It was being done as the event happened. And Jonathan said, I can't cut. So that part, and the people were crying, and it was real. What she was talking about was not just Toni Morrison's words came ancestrally alive. And everybody, the technicians, the people, the little children, everybody felt it. People who were there will never forget it. That was my experience of Beloved. Jonathan Demme, he was like sunshine. Yeah.
Dianne, it's so beautiful to hear you talk about these experiences that you've had that, those of us who were not there cannot know about. And you're explaining it to us in such a visual and heartfelt way that I don't know, you're really giving us a lot of clarity and beauty here. Thank you.
Yes.
Dianne, listen, this is a wonderful moment also to talk about. You've talked several times now about work that you've done that sort of reflects what has happened. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in some ways, what is happening, even though the play was written a long time before this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You have also created work yourself, initiated mm-hmm. and directed and conceived work that arguably has actually made change happen. And what I'm talking about is Open the Door, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Dave and Kevin, could we please just see this slide? Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Would you mind, Dianne, taking a few minutes to talk with us about Open the Door, Virginia?
Yes. So this piece, I was inspired in 2004 when it was the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And I was reading about it. I read that there was one of the cases was initiated by a young girl, a 15-year-old girl in Farmville, Virginia, who stood up in her dilapidated school, which was cold in the winter, hot in the summer, had too many people in it. It was disgusting. Her people had gone, the parents had gone to the white Board of Education. All the schools were segregated. They had hand-me-downs from the white school children. and they had the hand-me-down books. Everything was like yucky. And their teachers were brilliant. They were like college professors. So what she wanted was a better school. So she decided to have a strike. She went on strike. She had her whole school system, all of her students walk out on strike in the middle of segregated Virginia in 1951. It was unheard of. And then she went to the, of course, the superintendent said, we want a better school. She called so I made a whole play about her and about all of that. And the man who was the lawyer, Oliver Hill, she called him. She had such energy and passion. She planned this for months. Nobody knew it. The principal didn't know it. And their case became part of Brown versus Board of Education. And after that, they had to have her leave town because that was too dangerous for her to stay there. After that, they closed the schools for 5 years because after Brown became the rule that segregated schools were unconstitutional, that county, Prince Edward County in Farmville, Virginia, they closed all their schools. And the people didn't have any place to go to school for 5 years. But they opened private schools for the white children. So as we developed that and did it at George Mason University with Theater of the First Amendment, Rick Davis, the producer of that organizational professional company within George Mason University, which ended, in 2012. He helped me, he was the producer of this. And it was just glorious, but all the politicians and the family members, all who were associated with it, all came. And so it gave a lot of energy to knowledge of this young lady. And now, not that it was just me, but it was kind of very quiet. And George Mason did a lot of publicity. Now there's going to be a statue erected in the U.S. Capitol of Barbara Rose Johns, the young lady who caused that protest in 1951. Her statue at the U.S. Capitol will replace the statue of Robert E. Lee. So yeah,
one of the most powerful things that art can do. Make
That.
Real change in our lives.
Yes.
Dianne, that's so wonderful. And I think that's also a wonderful way to sort of bring our discussion to a close. Because also you have another gig.
I do at the same time, overlapping. But one thing, I also did another piece that started at Theater of the First Amendment. That was all about my father. We won't talk too much about that, but I make these pieces from interviews of people. I don't make up the words myself. So the one about my father eventually was performed at other theaters, regional theaters, and at the Cleveland Playhouse. And the person who brought it to the Cleveland Playhouse was Peter Hackett.
Woo!
Who is on the faculty there at Dartmouth. And that was a dream come true, to do a work like that in a magnificent institution like the Cleveland Playhouse. I didn't live in Cleveland again, even though I was from there. And that piece about my father, it made my father a star in Cleveland. So that's a story. Those are some stories, people. Thanks, Jonathan. I call you Jonathan again.
I don't mind. You please call me Jonathan.
Like Jonathan Demme.
Thank you,
I work with so many people too, so many great directors. And Regina Taylor is one of them. And I'm going to an event that she is the producer of. Yeah.
Where I come from, we call that a hot and glamorous event.
Yes.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. and also with Bartlett Shear, we have a piece coming up in next year. Intimate Apparel, directed by Bartlett Shear. It is by Lynn Nottage and Ricky Gordon. It will resume rehearsals in sometime. It's the opening is planned early 2022. Yeah.
And Dianne, I'll entice people to follow you and your story beyond this talk, because your experience with intimate apparel during the pandemic is pretty interesting. So we will look for that story coming in the future. And I just want to thank you so very much for your being so generous with your time here. And it's really a pleasure to now know you and know you a bit. And I hope we can hang out sometime.
Yes, we got to hang out. We got to hang out on Zoom and in person.
Thank you so much, Dianne. And I will say good night to you. And I would just like to say a couple of thanks. Thank you to Mary Lou Oleski and Joshua Cole and Karina Sines, Dave Haggerty, Kevin Melenda, and the fabulous Demita Hopkins. And also to the incredible rock star team that is the staff of the Hopkins Center for the Arts. And special, extra special, wonderful thanks to Dianne McIntyre, who has been, you are a ray of light here, and you're so graceful and elegant, and love hearing your stories. Thank you so much. And please stay tuned for other episodes of Hop to Broadway in the future. Thank you all so much, and have a good night.
Good night.
Talking, happy talk. Talk about things you'd like to do. You've got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna have a dream come true? Happy talking, happy talk. Talk about things you'd like to do. You've got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna have a dream come true? Let's talk about the moon, floating in the sky, looking like a lily on a lake. Talk about the bird, learning how to fly, making all the music he can make. Hey, happy talking, happy talk. Talk about things you'd like to do. You've got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna have a dream come true?